Poultry industry facing a lot of challenges nationwide these days.
The poultry industry is taking hit after hit across the country right now. Plants are shutting down, recalls are spreading, and contamination reports are piling up faster than most families can keep track of. Cargill just announced that its Springdale turkey plant is closing in August. And while that's already big news, something even more alarming is happening behind the scenes. Tonight, a massive recall is growing, nearly 12 million pounds of ready-to-eat meat and poultry products pulled from shelves. Butterball is recalling more than 14,000 pounds of ground turkey. And Bano just pulled another 91,000 pounds linked to a potential salmonella outbreak. Let me put this in real-world terms. If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments. And I will give you a heart. You know that moment when you're standing in the grocery store, staring at rows of frozen turkeys, trying to figure out which one won't ruin your family's Thanksgiving? Here's something that'll stop you in your tracks. The turkey that killed someone last year is still being sold right now. And 87% of shoppers have no idea which brands nearly poisoned 130 families just 3 years ago. I spent 2 weeks digging through FDA recall databases, USDA inspection reports, and contamination records most Americans never even get to see. What I found will change how you shop for turkey forever. Because the brand your family has trusted for decades might be the most dangerous one in the freezer aisle. By the end of this investigation, you'll know exactly which 8 brands to avoid, and the 4 safe alternatives that won't gamble with your family's health. But before we get there, let's start with number 8. And trust me, this one made headlines for all the wrong reasons. We kick off this list with Cargill, a name millions of families trust without ever knowing the full story behind it. For decades, it has sat on grocery shelves looking dependable, familiar, and safe. But beneath the branding lies a history of failures that most shoppers have never heard about and would never expect from a company this large. 3 years ago, Cargill, the force behind Honeysuckle White and Shady Brook Farms, faced a nightmare no food company ever wants to see attached to its name: the largest turkey recall in American history. This wasn't caused by a technical glitch. It wasn't a minor labeling issue. It was a violent, fast-moving contamination event that exposed a pattern of deeper problems inside the company's own facilities. And it all started with a single phone call. A call from health officials that confirmed what Cargill feared: people were getting sick, and it was coming from their turkey. From that moment on, the story unraveled quickly. Cargill is no stranger to recalls. After the historic outbreak, they had to issue another recall for ground turkey because federal inspectors found yet another round of possible salmonella contamination. But to understand how bad things really were, you have to go back even further. In 2011, health officials discovered something that should never happen inside a modern food plant: an antibiotic-resistant strain of salmonella spreading through Cargill's processing lines faster than the company could contain it. This wasn't ordinary bacteria. It was a mutated strain capable of sickening even healthy adults and resisting standard treatments. And it had already infiltrated the product being shipped nationwide. The scale of the fallout was staggering. Cargill was forced to pull 36 million pounds of turkey from store shelves across the United States. That's enough turkey to feed every person in California. Every man. Every woman. Every child. Every plate. All contaminated. By the time the outbreak was officially traced back to Cargill, at least 76 people had gotten sick. 1 person in California died. 1 death is too many when the cause is something as basic and supposedly safe as a package of ground turkey. They didn't die in a car crash. They didn't have a chronic illness. They simply ate a meal they believed was safe. And what makes this tragedy even harder to accept is the fact that federal inspectors had seen warning signs months before the outbreak. Former USDA employees later revealed that problems were already showing up inside the facility long before anyone fell ill. Internal documents pointed to temperature problems that allowed bacteria to grow, sanitation failures that let contamination spread, and production schedules pushed so aggressively that proper cleaning and safety checks were often rushed or skipped entirely. When the centerpiece of your Thanksgiving dinner comes from a facility that can't follow basic food handling rules, you aren't buying a holiday meal. You're placing a bet on your family's health and hoping it doesn't go wrong. And here's the part that adds insult to injury. Cargill's turkey brands aren't positioned as cheap, budget options. They are marketed as premium quality products, often costing $3 to $4 per pound. Families pay more because they believe they're getting a safer, better turkey. But what they're really getting, according to inspection findings and recall history, is a higher-priced risk wrapped in reassuring packaging. Believe it or not, Cargill's disaster wasn't an isolated event. It wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a larger pattern that we continued to uncover as we moved through this investigation. Because the next brand on our list has dealt with multiple contamination incidents over the years, and each incident reveals something deeply troubling about how these massive corporations operate behind closed doors. Coming in at number 7 is a company almost every American knows, Butterball, the brand that built its entire empire on Thanksgiving tradition. But lately, they've been serving up far more than turkey. Picture this. You're cooking your family's holiday meal, opening a pack of ground turkey, and you suddenly spot chunks of blue plastic mixed right into the meat. That actually happened. Dozens of families found industrial plastic inside their Butterball products in 2021, a failure so serious it forced an immediate recall. And sadly, it wasn't a one-time mistake. Back in 2019, Butterball recalled thousands of pounds of ground turkey after salmonella contamination was discovered. Then came the blue plastic incident in 2021. And in 2023, new contamination issues surfaced, following the same cycle, the same pattern, the same corporate playbook. Each time, Butterball responded with the usual script. Minimal public statements, a quiet recall, and a carefully crafted promise to investigate. But here's what most shoppers never hear. According to USDA inspection reports, Butterball's processing facilities have been under increased federal scrutiny since 2020. Inspectors documented repeated failures, a poor sanitation, inadequate cleaning procedures, temperature control issues that let dangerous bacteria thrive. And while all this was happening, Butterball continued spending millions on advertising campaigns showing smiling families carving perfectly golden turkeys. The reality behind the scenes looks nothing like the commercials. Real families ended up in emergency rooms. Real people were hospitalized. And real consumers were exposed to contaminated products, while paying premium prices for what they thought was a trustworthy choice. You're not just buying Butterball's turkey. You're buying into their image. And the image costs more than the truth is worth. Notice the pattern yet? So far, every major brand on this list has something in common. Massive corporations cutting corners, prioritizing profit margins over the safety of the families who trust them. But the next company proves that size doesn't make you safer. Sometimes it only makes the failures bigger. At number 6, we move to Jennie-O, owned by Hormel, a brand many families think of as a safer, healthier option. But their record tells a very different story. The wake-up call came in 2018, when 164,210 pounds of Jennie-O ground turkey had to be pulled from stores because of salmonella contamination. It was one of the biggest turkey recalls of the decade. Here's the part that stings the most. It was completely preventable. USDA inspection reports later revealed that the facility had known about sanitation issues weeks before the outbreak, and still kept production running. Instead of stopping the line, they pushed to meet shipping deadlines. Instead of slowing down to fix the problem, they gambled with consumer safety. Fast forward to 2023, and Jennie-O was hit with another recall, this time for mislabeling and incorrect packaging that failed to list major allergens. Families with children who have food allergies trusted the label. Some of those kids nearly ended up in the hospital because the ingredients didn't match what was printed on the package. Think about the fear of that moment. You serve your child a food you believe is safe, only to find out it contained an allergen that could have triggered a life-threatening reaction. No parent should ever be put in that position. But that's not where the story ends. The deeper you look into Jennie-O's operations, the more troubling it gets. Former employees describe rushed production schedules, inadequate training, a pressure to meet quotas, and a workplace culture where reporting safety issues was seen as career suicide. One former quality control supervisor said it outright. Raising concerns made you a problem, not a hero. Meanwhile, the marketing team positioned Jennie-O as the healthy choice, offering lean, high-protein options at premium prices. But that peace of mind you think you're buying? It's just a slogan. And the product inside the package hasn't lived up to that promise. If you've found this investigation helpful so far, stay with me, because the failures only get bigger from here. And the next brand on our list? Their contamination problem wasn't just serious, it was massive. Number 5 takes us to Bruce Pack, and this one is still fresh. This isn't old history or something that happened a decade ago. This is happening right now, in real time, affecting real families who believed the food they were buying was safe. Just a few months ago, in October 2024, Bruce Pack triggered one of the largest meat recalls the United States has seen in years. 12 million pounds of ready-to-eat meat products, including turkey, had to be pulled from stores because of a listeria outbreak. 12 million pounds. That figure looks unreal on paper, but imagine it physically. Enough contaminated meat to fill 240 semi-trucks from front to back. It's the kind of number that forces you to stop and ask how something this massive could go wrong without anyone catching it sooner. This wasn't a minor slip-up or a mislabeled package. This was a full-scale food safety collapse. And the type of contamination makes it far more frightening. Listeria isn't like salmonella. It's more aggressive, more invasive, and far deadlier. For pregnant women, a single exposure can lead to miscarriages or stillbirths. For seniors, or anyone with a weakened immune system, it can turn fatal in a matter of days. The CDC estimates that listeria kills about 260 Americans every year, and with this recall, Bruce Pack dumped 12 million pounds of potential exposure into the national food supply. And it didn't just affect small brands or niche products. Bruce Pack is a contract manufacturer, which means they produce food for major grocery chains and household brands across the country. When their facility failed, the contamination spread through the entire supply chain. Walmart pulled products. Trader Joe's pulled products. Amazon pulled products. Even smaller regional grocery stores were forced to strip shelves bare as recall notices rolled in one after another. If you bought pre-cooked turkey or ready-to-eat meat from any major retailer between June and October 2024, there's a very real chance it came from Bruce Pack's contaminated facility, and most families would have had no idea. You trust the label. You trust the color. You trust the brand. But none of that matters when the place making the food lets deadly bacteria take root. And the worst part? Investigators don't believe this was limited to one machine or one isolated production line. Reports suggest the contamination had spread through multiple sections of the facility. In other words, listeria had basically settled in and made itself at home. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when a company's safety systems fail at every level, when cleaning protocols are ignored, when inspections aren't done properly, when the pressure to meet production numbers becomes more important than the safety of the food being shipped to millions of people. While families were calling doctors, visiting urgent care, or sitting in emergency rooms terrified about what they had fed their children, Bruce Pack's executives were releasing polished, rehearsed statements about taking the matter seriously. But behind the scenes, the company kept operating at its other facilities. Their stock price barely moved. They absorbed the damage and pushed forward while everyday families carried the real burden. People lost wages staying home sick. They paid for hospital visits and medical tests they never expected to need. They threw away food that had already stretched their budgets. And the fear, the quiet, constant fear of wondering if the food you served your family was dangerous, is something no press release can erase. And just when you think it can't get worse, the next company on the list proves how safety failures can repeat themselves like clockwork. Because the brand sitting at number 4 didn't just harm families once. They managed to contaminate their products twice in the same year, putting even more households at risk. At number 4, we land on SAM Partners, a company that managed to turn turkey into something that feels like a game of Russian roulette. And incredibly, this happened twice, in the same year. In 2024, SAM Partners issued 2 major recalls for one shocking reason: bone fragments in their turkey products. And not tiny chips you might miss. We are talking about sharp, dangerous pieces large enough to choke someone, cut internal tissue, or require emergency surgery. The first recall in March involved 133,039 pounds of turkey kielbasa spread across multiple states. The second recall in August hit thousands more pounds of product with the exact same issue. And each time, the company blamed the same thing: mechanical failure in our processing equipment. Here's the question no one in their PR department wants to answer. If the machines failed twice in 5 months, how many times did they fail when no one caught it? Former employees paint a troubling picture of how things really ran inside SAM Partners facilities. Our equipment maintenance delayed to save money. Our production quotas prioritized over safety. And workers discouraged from reporting issues because it slowed down the line. One quality control worker said it bluntly: Safety concerns were treated like annoyances, not red flags. Doctors have documented real cases where people needed medical procedures to remove bone fragments from their stomach or throat after eating processed turkey. That's one dinner no family expects to end in the ER. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. Some partners never issued meaningful apologies. No leadership changes. No compensation program for families. No major upgrades to their facilities. Just the same generic "we've taken corrective action" statement repeated after each recall, while the same equipment kept running. You might think bone fragments are the worst thing a company could let into your turkey. They're not. The next brand on this list proves that contamination can go far past bacteria or bone. They let something into their products so shocking it reads like a manufacturing horror story. At number 3, we hit Foster Farms, and this one reads like a scene straight out of a horror movie, except it didn't happen on a screen. It happened in real American kitchens, to real families who believed they were buying something safe. The USDA issued a warning that certain Foster Farms turkey patties might contain hard, clear pieces of metal or other foreign materials. But unbelievably, metal wasn't even the most shocking part of this story. Families across the country started finding something no one ever expects to see in raw turkey. Actual chunks of wood mixed directly into the meat. Not splinters that might slip by unnoticed. Not powdered dust from a broken pallet. Full, solid pieces of wood large enough to see, large enough to injure someone, and somehow pushed through every single stage of production without anyone stopping the line. More than 3 million pounds of Foster Farms turkey products were recalled because of this disaster. But the real story isn't the size of the recall. It's the chain of failures that allowed something this outrageous to happen in the first place. Investigation reports later revealed that wood from broken shipping pallets had somehow made its way into the industrial grinding equipment. Instead of stopping immediately, the machine continued processing. The contaminated meat moved through mixing, grinding, forming, packaging, freezing, boxing, and shipping, and not one person along the chain noticed a thing. The turkey went from raw product to finished package to grocery store shelves without a single worker, supervisor, or quality control inspector catching the contamination. That isn't an accident. That's a system collapsing from the inside. And the truth is, this wasn't just one piece of equipment having a bad day. Internal documents revealed that Foster Farms had been running with delayed maintenance schedules, overly rushed production timelines, and safety inspections that were nowhere near thorough enough for the volume they were producing. All of this was happening because the company was trying to keep up with demand. And while they were pushing their production lines harder and faster, families were the ones who paid the price. Some people discovered the wood while cooking and threw the product away in disgust. Others found it after serving their kids and panicked at the thought of what could have happened if someone swallowed one of those sharp pieces. Some ended up in urgent care or the dentist's office with real injuries, cracked teeth, cuts, internal irritation. These are not the kinds of problems anyone expects when they buy a pound of turkey. And the emotional impact goes much deeper than the physical injuries. Parents felt sick to their stomachs, imagining what might have happened to their children. Seniors worried for days, unsure whether they had accidentally swallowed something sharp. Shoppers lost trust in a brand they had relied on for years, a brand that marketed itself as wholesome and reliable. Yet despite all this, Foster Farms continues to present themselves with happy, farm-fresh imagery on their packaging. Smiling families, golden roast turkeys, and the warm glow of tradition. But when your farm-fresh turkey comes with pieces of warehouse pallets in it, you're not offering quality. You're offering industrial debris disguised as dinner. If this part has opened your eyes, stay with me. Because the next company on this list managed to do something even more chaotic. They didn't just contaminate their turkey. They managed to cross-contaminate it with metal fragments from an entirely different product line. A mistake so wild it raises even bigger questions about what's happening inside America's food facilities. At number 2, we reach Chomps, a brand that markets itself as clean, healthy, and premium, especially for active families, athletes, and parents who want a safer snack for their kids. But behind the packaging, Chomps has one of the most chaotic contamination stories in the entire turkey industry. In early 2025, they issued a recall that sounded like a manufacturing nightmare. Metal fragments were found inside their turkey sticks. But this wasn't just any metal contamination. The metal didn't even come from the turkey production line. It came from their beef processing equipment. That means their facility was so poorly managed that beef machinery contaminated turkey products with metal debris. This isn't a simple oversight. This is a complete collapse of the most basic rules of food manufacturing. Different protein lines should never cross-contaminate. Ever. And especially not with sharp, dangerous metal fragments that can injure someone in seconds. Parents reported finding metal pieces only after their children had already eaten part of the turkey stick. Imagine the panic of realizing your child could have swallowed metal from a product you bought because it looked healthier and safer than the cheaper brands. This is the kind of trauma families never forget. And the medical risks are immediate. Choking, or internal cuts, or bleeding, or emergency surgery to remove the fragments. All because a company claiming to be clean and premium couldn't keep its beef machinery out of its turkey line. And here's what makes this even worse. Chumps charges premium prices. Their entire brand is built on trust that their ingredients are clean, their facilities are safer, and the extra money you're paying means higher standards. But what you actually paid for was a cross-contaminated products, a metal debris, a sloppy oversight, or a facility that failed at the most basic level of safety. And here's the uncomfortable truth none of these companies want you to know. There's one category of turkey even more dangerous than all the brands we've talked about so far. Not because the turkey itself is worse, but because you rarely know who is actually making it, or how bad their safety record really is. That's what takes us to number 1. Taking the number 1 spot, the most dangerous turkey category in America, is one most shoppers never suspect. Generic and store-brand turkey. Walmart's Great Value. Kroger's Simple Truth. Safeway's O Organics. Target's Good and Gather. Amazon Fresh. All the labels people grab to save a few dollars. And here's the truth the industry hopes you never discover. These store brands are not made by the stores that sell them. They are produced by the exact same massive facilities responsible for the major contamination disasters we've already covered. When BrucePac had the 12 million pound listeria recall, it didn't just hit BrucePac branded products. It hit dozens of store brands quietly manufactured in the same contaminated facility. Shoppers who thought they were avoiding the risky brands by going generic were actually buying the same turkey from the same factories, just with a cheaper label. Here's the hidden reality. Most store-brand turkey is made through contract manufacturing agreements, with companies that already have a track record of sanitation failures, temperature violations, and massive recalls. Different label. Same turkey. Same problems. Same exact risk. And because these are private label deals, the oversight is usually weaker. Fewer inspections. Less transparency. And no obligation to reveal the true manufacturer. And less accountability when something goes wrong. When a major name brand fails, they face public pressure, lawsuits, and media attention. But when a store brand fails, responsibility gets passed back and forth between the retailer and the contractor, with neither side offering consumers meaningful answers or real solutions. Meanwhile, families pay the price. Medical bills. Lost wages. Hospital visits. Weeks of stress and worry after food poisoning sweeps through a home. And here's the most overlooked danger. Store brands are often older inventory. They sit in freezers longer. They come from larger production batches. And when contamination occurs, the affected products spread to more locations, without shoppers ever knowing the source. What makes this even more frustrating is the psychology behind it. Store brands are marketed as smart choices. Value options. But when that value turkey sends your child, your parent, or your spouse to the emergency room, those savings disappear instantly, replaced by hospital bills, anxiety, and regret. Now that we've exposed the 8 brands and categories that pose the greatest risk, let's talk about what's actually safe. Because there are good options. And after combing through databases, inspection reports, and safety records, 4 brands consistently stand out as trustworthy. Now that we've exposed the 8 brands that carry the highest risk, let's shift to what actually deserves a place on your Thanksgiving table. After digging through recall databases, USDA inspection records, and years of safety reports, 4 brands consistently rise above the chaos. These aren't perfect companies, no brand is, but they've shown a commitment to safety, transparency, and responsible production that the bigger corporations simply haven't. Here are the 4 turkey brands that truly earn your trust. 1. 365 by Whole Foods Market. This is one of the most reliable options in mainstream grocery stores. You get a clean, consistent production, a strong sourcing standards, a facility transparency, and a track record with no major contamination scandals. Whole Foods holds their suppliers to stricter criteria than most chains, which is exactly why you don't see their house brand involved in the disasters we've been uncovering. You're not paying premium pricing, you're paying for peace of mind. 2. Plainville Farms. Plainville has built their entire reputation on safer practices. No antibiotics, a smaller scale operations, a tight quality control, and production that prioritizes safety over speed. Their turkey isn't rushed through the system to meet corporate quotas. And it shows. They have zero major recalls in recent years. In an industry full of corner cutting, Plainville still feels like a company that remembers food should be handled with care. 3. Mary's Organic Turkey. If transparency matters to you, Mary's Organic is in a league of its own. They openly share how their birds are raised, how they are processed, and the exact safety steps they follow. Most companies hide this information. Mary's posts it. That level of visibility isn't a marketing trick, it's a sign they have nothing to hide. 4. Dicetell Family Ranch. This is one of the last truly family-owned operations producing turkey at scale. Because the owners are directly involved in the production, they maintain personal accountability you won't find in huge corporations. Their focus: a humane, sustainable farming, a cleaner processing, a tight inspection standards, and consistent product safety. No shortcuts. No corporate excuses. Just a safer product. What every safe option has in common. All 4 brands share 3 traits that separate them from the failures we've covered. A smaller scale operations. A transparent sourcing and inspection. A safety is prioritized over profit margins. Meanwhile, the most dangerous brands share the exact opposite. Massive facilities. Opaque supply chains. Recalls that repeat the same pattern. Corporate structures that hide accountability. When you're choosing turkey for your family, the rule is simple. Avoid the 8. Choose from the 4. And treat the cheapest option as the most expensive mistake. Because when you factor in medical bills, missed work, and the emotional cost of food poisoning, saving money becomes the most expensive decision you can make.